Okay, we're good.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I think we're ready to get started. We're here for how the DKAN Open Data Platform empowers scientists. So we've got 3 speakers. We're going to be talking about open data, DKAN, and science. So you're in for a real treat. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are. It's not shifting.
Maybe the batteries went. It's okay.
Do you want me to?
I can actually, I'll just stay with that. DKAN is an open data platform and has a lot of great visualization tools. We're going to be talking about what DKAN is, what open data is, and then also how scientists are using it. Go to the next slide. And I'm Elizabeth Raley. I'm Director of Professional Services at CivicActions. I'm joined by 2 other CivicActioners. We have Adam Bergstein, he's the Associate Director of Engineering, and Stefanie Gray. She's listed as an engineer, but also a data and GIS and open data specialist. And then we have Gerard Lezzo here, geneticist at the USDA. Geneticist is a genetic scientist. I see some first students, so I'm doing that. So we're going to start out when each person is going to, you can go to the next slide, is going to do a presentation. I'm going to frame a presentation with a question. So we'll have kind of 3 go-rounds. After they do their presentations, we hope that you have some nice juicy questions for them. So we'll save time for that. And before each person presents, I'll also reintroduce them so you kind of have some context of who's talking and how that might relate to the info that they're giving us. So we're going to start with Adam Bergstein, and if you want to switch spots,
Sure.
you can tell me next slide, and I'll
Sounds good.
get us through. So Adam is the DKAN product lead at CivicActions, and Adam, your framing question: can you elaborate on how Drupal and DKAN can serve as a foundation for scientific open data needs?
That sounds like a great question. Okay, so for us to get a little grounded on how to answer that question, I think we need to start by asking the question, what is DKAN? So DKAN is a Drupal-based, open source, open data platform, and it manages all aspects of open data, and we'll talk a little bit about what open data is in later slides here. It basically helps with all the cataloging, the publishing. It has a lot of visualization features, things that we're used to and accustomed to in the Drupal community. And the most important aspect of it is it allows the data that you're publishing inside of DKAN to be open, right? So other people, other citizens, other researchers and everything like that can make use of the data that you're putting into the catalog. So we have a couple really core features that are in the DKAN platform that I think are super useful to frame this discussion. The first one is really we have to make sure that we can manage the data and publish it. That's one of the key features that we need to make sure foundationally is there. Otherwise, it's not doing anything useful. The next thing, we have all these powerful APIs that are in the DKAN Datastore. Those APIs enable other systems to interface with the data that DKAN is storing. We want to make sure that the data is communicated really well and easily understood by other systems. So we're going to also look and find different levels of compliance and standards that we can hit with DKAN to make sure that other systems can make the most of the data. And so we talk about Project Open Data Compliance, which Stefanie will be getting into in a much greater detail later. I'm just kind of introducing the concept at a high level. And for most folks that are used to Drupal, there's a really, everyone knows that you can build really robust features and displays and data visualizations inside of Drupal itself using charting libraries and tools. And because this is a Drupal-based data system, you can have a lot of different angles of previewing data, of building visualizations inside of DKAN. So it's really well wired to do that and has a lot of features just built in right out of the box. And then we're going to add a lot of the Drupal special sauce on top of this data management. So we're going to have groupings of data that you can manage and have different groups within an organization that can publish their data. We have different topics that you can tag the data a certain way and categorize it so people can use that. And then we have data workflows. So if you're not ready to publish the data yet, you can stage it, have it ready to go, and all that's really baked in. And one of the really cool things too around open data is it's not just about the data management practices itself. It's about the insight and the application, trying to gain knowledge from the data. So DKAN itself has a lot of features around data dashboards and data stories that allow you to write up and analyze and share your insights about the data that you're having. DKAN organizes data in we have this nice little file drawer thing, right? That you can have groups of data, big categories of information. And inside of that, you would have, say, a data set. And that would say, this is like all of my different types of information with resources inside of that data set. So that could be grouped by 2017 data, 2016 data, 2015 data, all inside of one data set that is common around one type of information. One of the really key things about open data is understanding what metadata is in practice. So metadata is really the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why of the information that we're putting inside of DKAN. This is what helps people to really use and understand what data they're consuming if you're sharing it out into the public. So we have a nice little Metallica diagram there, right? But we have a screenshot of what DKAN shows with respect to some of the different metadata by default that it has out of the box. One other really cool thing too is you're working and consuming with a large amount of information, a substantial amount. So you really do need a quick way to be able to preview and see information. DKAN provides that right out of the box. Provides tables, maps, grids, anything that you really could imagine in a very standard, kind of open sort of way, leveraging all the best tools in the Drupal community to give you very easy previews of information. One of the things, though, that, as I mentioned, you really want to try to consume the data and get some meaning from it. So DKAN, we have a lot of tools baked into DKAN itself and tools outside of it, like the React dashboard, that enables us to basically build super robust and highly tuned user experience dashboards that can really bring your data to life. Truly visualize it in a way that people can gain insight from it. The architecture of DKAN is actually well supported to be extended into different use cases. And we're talking about science today. That is the space that we are presenting in. But as you can see, it's very similar to other Drupal-based systems. We've got the Drupal core, and it has a whole bunch of things, and it extends to the framework. We've got DKAN itself that provides a core set of features that are also extensible inside of its framework. We can add on some contributed modules. These are things like well-vetted in the DKAN space. You can tune, add on, enable based on your use case. And in specific use case, we also have research-driven modules for scientists that you can turn on and enable based on exactly what you might need for certain metadata packages, workflows reviewing, or any APIs that are specific to science. On that note, I'm going to reintroduce Stefanie, who is going to talk a bit more about how DKAN fits in with the scientific open data community.
Great. So Stefanie is a GIS and open data specialist. And Stefanie, your framing question, what makes open data truly open? Also, what aspects of open data and metadata do scientists care about the most?
Great questions. All right, Elizabeth. Hey, everyone. So I guess when we were switching from Google Slides to Keynote, it shrank some of the things I had put in there.
Everyone put your glasses on.
Oh, okay. I'm not wearing them. Anyway, so what makes open data truly open? It's all about accessibility, reusability, and machine readability. Whether or not people can access your data in the first place is so crucial to whether or not it's actually open to others. If you have to sign in, if you have to log in to be able to access data, it is not truly open. If you have to pay for it, it is not truly open. When we say open, we mean absolutely free of reuse, free to reuse and redistribute, and also be able to modify, edit, manipulate to be able to draw your own conclusions from the data. Yes, so open data can foster innovation. One great example that we have is Healthdatagov, which was built on DKAN. This was a project that came up in 2015 through the Department of Health and Human Services, and probably the previous Healthdatagov, which was built to house all of the federal data from HHS. So that involves all of the sub-agencies. It involves National Cancer Institute, the CDC, the NIH. There's so much data that HHS has to keep track of. Their old site was built on CKAN, the predecessor to DKAN, which did not use Drupal. And it was almost the equivalent of having a library with far too many books and publications for the amount of space that it was given. So the previous Healthdatagov, before it was redone on DKAN, was practically bursting at the seams. It was very slow, it was difficult to be able to preview data, there were no visualizations available. So 2015, it was completely redone by the DKAN team. It was a really great custom project, but mostly using out-of-the-box DKAN. The few custom modules that we added, aside from the federal extras module, which is included in out-of-the-box DKAN, they were for features such as being able to provide feedback and upvote and downvote certain pieces of feedback on the data. But it made HHS super happy because they were able to host what is now up to 3,552 data sets from all of these different topics, be it Medicare, hospital quality, community, inpatient services, so many tags, formats, publishers. It's all hosted in one place. And as you're browsing through the datasets page on a DKAN site, you can see this dataset right here, Certificate of Need Applications, beginning 1974. This is a dataset that's currently on Healthdatagov that was federated from the state of New York's open data site, using a JSON or XML endpoint to be able to harvest that data and federate it to Healthdatagov. And there's little logos right here underneath the dataset: CSV, RDF, JSON, text/XML. Those are all of the data resources that are inside of the data set. So that's telling you about those formats. So if you're in science or academia and you've spent late nights searching for the exact piece of data you need, I know that was my experience when I was studying GIS and geography. And I was in school before open data were a big thing. Open data portals were a big thing. So if I wanted a specific shape file that I was working with for ArcGIS, I would have to go onto the local university's data repository or hope that there was some weird FTP server I could get into. So the fact that you're able to preview and see exactly which formats you're getting with these data sets is so crucial. And then moving on from there, how can Drupal and DKAN serve as a foundation for scientific and open data needs? The DKAN Datastore and extensibility. So the DKAN Datastore, that's on the back end of DKAN. It parses data down to its most basic form. So it's breaking down the very large-scale CSVs that can be imported to DKAN Datastore to their most basic tables to be able to store them for optimizing data previews and data visualizations. It also makes the DKAN Datastore API very powerful if you are using an API to pull from data stored in DKAN. And it can really just store and optimize vast series of data over time. For example, there are other open data portals that would not be able to host 100 meg CSV or a few gig large CSV file of all of the traffic violations in New York City. That is a whole lot of locations, a whole lot of slots, a whole lot of cars. DKAN is still able to store, parse, and preview that CSV. Oh, and extensible tools, also very good for machine readability and keeping open data open. So how can Drupal and DKAN serve as a foundation for scientific open data needs? Well, there are plenty of open data compliance standards out there in the scientific world, and DKAN will help you be able to comply with said standards. Project Open Data. I don't know if you guys remember President Obama. He was this really cool guy that we used to have. I really miss him. He implemented in 2009 Project Open Data, which is the official federal policy governing open data publishing and metadata standards and specifications. And it's really great because all of the federal and state data portals that participate in Project Open Data, all of that data gets federated to data.gov, data.gov being your one-stop shop for all of the open data that you need. So Project Open Data makes that possible. And DKAN's Federal Extras module is a nice little module that you can turn on when you install DKAN that allows for bonus Project Open Data compliance metadata fields for, as I mentioned, data.gov. We're talking more about, oh, I guess there is stuff that turned gray when it got imported to Keynote. That's okay, my last name is Gray, I will keep rolling with it. All right, so what was grayed out on that slide? This was
about like having different scientific data formats and standards. In this example,
yes,
we have spatial data.
So geospatial data, I'm really partial to it. I'm coming from the GIS world. This is a piece of geospatial data. It's an ArcGIS shapefile that is hosted on the state of North Dakota's GIS site. And North Dakota, a lot of people don't think is a very interesting place. It turns out it is, because there are a lot of omernic ecoregions making up all of the geological and climatological regions of the state, and that is very important data for them. However, there are very important geospatial metadata standards when you're working with data like this. And this standard, ISO 19139, that is a very specific scientific geospatial standard, and that includes all of the metadata that's really pertinent to this, because if you don't have good geospatial metadata, first of all, no one will know where the hell you're talking about, because a lot of states are the same shape. And aside from that, geospatial metadata also helps when it comes to coordinates and projection systems. If you are loading a shapefile into a GIS platform and trying to check out that map, and it doesn't have the right coordinate system, it's literally just going to stretch and skew and screw up your map and make it every which way. So adhering to those metadata standards helps you avoid these terrible mapping situations. I guess GIS folks don't get into that, but that is one very specific and necessary example of scientific metadata. So by using the Open Data Schema Mapper, you are able to put in custom metadata fields, such as geographic coordinate systems, so that your open data adheres to those exact metadata standards and specifications and gives your users all of the information that they need to go forth and reuse and do awesome things with your data. So the last bit is going to be about interoperability. So this is what a data.json endpoint looks like. And currently, Project Open Data compliant open data portals such as USDA.gov, Healthdatagov, data.ca.gov. This is all part of out-of-the-box DKAN also. They have a data.json endpoint where you're able to view in pure JavaScript all of the contents of the data catalog. So if you have an outside data harvesting app or program, or if you're using the DKAN data harvester from the second DKAN data portal, you're able to query and pull information from this JSON endpoint, and you can filter and pull exactly which data sets you need if you're harvesting them elsewhere. That is super, super handy. For example, let's say I created a brand new DKAN data portal just for New York City. I want all of the health data that has to do with New York City. I want to harvest it off of healthdata.gov. I can set up my DKAN instance with the DKAN Harvester module to pull in filter keyword New York City and also specific keywords that I may want within that render keyword schema. Regardless, I can set up the exact schema I want, harvest that data from the endpoint and filter it for exactly what I want and what I need. So this not only is the data open, the fact that you're able to use, reuse, and that guy shouting really loudly, open data is awesome.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, next we have Gerard Lazo. Oh, you could have talked. Thank you, Stephanie. Gerard Lazo. So Gerard is our geneticist from USDA, and your framing question: can you describe some use cases in which science and research has leveraged open data and DKAN?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Just to give you a little background, my background training is in microbiology and plant pathology. But in the last probably 10, 15 years, I've been a data scientist on biological topics. Mainly I work with a project called Grain Genes. We work with small grain crops for wheat, barley, rye, and oat. And just to give you a little bit of background, let's see. Can I go back one? Is that, I don't know which direction I was going.
I'll do it, Gerard. So this is...
Okay, that's the next one. Anyway, because this is the digital age, there's volumes and volumes of information out there. And basically all scientists right now are struggling to deal with that data. And and we're all biologists, so it really takes a data scientist to be integrated into the research community to be able to move this information. And there is one project that is working at the National Agricultural Library. I worked with Cynthia Parr and Ursula Pieper there, and they're involved more with this project. I'm just presenting this work based on what they have told me. But they're at National Agricultural Library, and they have this project called, they're trying to consolidate all information in the agricultural field, and they're starting, and they have implemented a DKAN-based project. And basically it's being able to take in data from federal repositories, university, and industry repositories, being able to put it into a centralized resource where all this information can be available. And there's other sources, and then in being in a research environment, we have the data producers. We also produce information that goes into this database, and I guess this area here, experimental devices and farm equipment. The area that I work in, it's genome research, and we're sequencing genomes and genomes and genomes. The human genome was done in the year 2000, and also the rice genome was also done then. So it's only, it's been 17 years. And now for wheat, barley, rye, and oat, we're just now, like within the last year, starting to see those genomes come together. And when you have those genomes, it's a reference genome, and there's a lot of information that you want to tie into those reference genomes to learn about germplasm diversity. This would be applied towards trying to breed for disease resistance, better traits. Coming up, we're starting to get, the world is starting to get to a point where we need to feed the world, and having tools like this available will really help in that direction. But Ag Data Commons is a site that's in service at the National Ag Library, and it's starting to house all this information. And if I go to the next slide, this is sort of the page, the front end page for it. There's a number of data sets that are tied to it. Not only genome research, but there's a variety of agricultural aspects that are addressed here. You can go for crop yield, fertilizer amendments, and just insect populations. There's a lot of different topics all over the board that you could be able to access from this database, or from this resource. Right now, I think I looked at the data sets. There's about almost 300 different data sets in there right now, but I think over time this will really start to grow even further. And this is open data to the public. Public can access this information and find out more. Find out more about the progress that agriculture is making. Here's okay. Just wanted to mention, but since this is a Drupal conference, Adam had mentioned some of the APIs that could be tied into DKAN, and one of them, if you were to go to the Drupal website and look at modules for biology, right now there's only a handful. It says 19 modules match your search. There's very few that are addressed towards biology, but I do want to point to this one called Drupal. This has been a project that's been around for probably a little over 5 years, but it's been built and it's working within the Drupal environment. It was actually added to the Drupal website, I think within the last year. And since that time, there's been a number of different research projects that are adopting the Drupal module to run in their Drupal environments to provide information on a number of different topics. Even within Drupal, what Drupal does is it's a interface using the Drupal front end to connect to a back-end database that contains biological terms called the Chato database. It's an independent database, so it's separate from the database that Drupal is actually running. But some of the modules that extending modules that have been added to Drupal handle things like germplasm collections. There's some germplasm phylogeny data, so you can actually look at the pedigrees of germplasm. There's a lot of tools in there for doing genome annotations to look for genome sequences, look at the gene sets that are present within certain genomes. And I've been talking a lot about genomes, and I mentioned wheat, barley, rye, there's rice, there's maize. You know, a lot of these genomes have almost complete sets. And if you go to the Drupal page that highlights Drupal, it'll link you to this project website, that drupal.info. At this site, there's connections to versions 2 and version 3 of the database. There was a version 1 that was running under Drupal version 6 at one time, and version 1 ran on Drupal 7. But there's been some updates to it, so right now they're at Drupal 3. And this is still at version 7. There's not a Drupal 8 version of this software at this time. But just to highlight some of the projects that are running Drupal, I just listed some of the known projects that have this as an interface. So you have banana, cacao, citrus, cotton. Cotton Gen was one of the first projects that adopted this environment. Metadata, which is a legume, and there's actually several different legume databases. There's Peanut Base, Legume Information Service, the No-Pulse, which is the pulse drop information. That's also includes a lot of legumes. The Hardwood Genomics project. So if you go to these projects, you're going to get a genome view of many of these plant systems. That are of agricultural importance. There's a lot of links to genome information, chromosome structure. There's a lot, and even with a reference genome, there's multiple genomes that are sequenced. So there's a lot of activity in this area. And just to mention some of the things that are tied to Drupal. It makes use of some of these other tools that are available. Many of them have been created by the Gmod project. It's an effort, generic model organism database project, which has built a lot of tools to help resolve information that comes from the databases. So you have gbrowse, jbrowse, you have metabolic pathway tools. The Chato database, that's the engine for Drupal. It has a lot of information on biological terms, CMAP for creating genetic maps. But as far as the community goes, trying to bring in all these resources, there's this group called the Ag Bio Data, and our project is actually part of this. But this is a sort of a front-end approach of providing information about databases, plants and animals, anything agriculturally related that you can link from this web resource, and it'll point you to all the different databases. And ultimately, at some point, a lot of this information would then be connected to the DKAN system. You know, there'd be references, indexes, ways to develop APIs that will get you closer to this data, because most of these projects are already sort of independently built and provide a local resource, but using DKAN as a resource to point to all these other resources, especially there's a collaboration that's being built through National Ag Library with the DKAN group to provide this data. And so as time moves on, the open data-ness, I would say, or being able to get information on demand is becoming available. I don't know if there was another slide.
How was that?
But anyway, that's just sort of a quick overview, very, very quick. There's a lot more data out there. I've been involved with a lot of the research groups that have been involved in generating this data because we're sort of a community that talks to each other about trying on how to develop these databases. But the DKAN effort is one additional feature that we need to pay more attention to so that we can learn how to make data more open. And we're trying to follow these guidelines of the open data in government. And this is one way that we can do it.
Thanks, Jared. So now we'd like to open it up to questions. Yes.
How do you guys visualize this data? I mean, I came a little bit late, but I mean, so you got the data in the data set. Like, how does one now render that information on the page?
So there are a number of data preview visualization options in DKAN. There are also two separate things. So there are DKAN data previews when you're browsing through data sets and resources. You can view them in the form of a table, graph, or map. So the graph feature is actually pretty cool too. For example, you don't have to go through all the trouble of downloading and opening up the whole thing in Excel yourself to see whether or not the data can in fact be graphed or mapped. There's also the visualizations entity module that uses D3 to create charts. We're also adding maps to that and adding more features in the future. There are also React dashboards that can be turned on and enabled within DKAN to create custom dashboards such as the ones that are shown here. This is an example of a dashboard that we built for Georgia schools. They have data available, open data, about every single school in every single district in the state of Georgia. And you can view exactly so many different statistics about it, how well the school is doing, certain demographics, how the elementary schools and the middle schools and such are doing on things like reading and math. So all of these dashboard options are available. And there's also data stories and data dashboards are content types within DKAN that are specifically built for you to be able to embed internal and external visualizations. And you can also weave them alongside content in data stories and data dashboards to really be able to fully illustrate what you're discussing here with the data. And also when you are embedding external visualizations, whether it's ArcGIS, CartoDB, Tableau, etc., embedding external visualizations on a DKAN data story or data dashboard is as easy as pasting in a YouTube embed link on like a blog post. So it's super simple to put those together and make some great informative content.
Sorry, just one more follow-up. Can you, are those sliders up there? Like, can users actually interact with these?
Yes, you can,
Yeah.
and it's awesome, especially like if you're a parent in Georgia who wants to compare a couple of different schools in your area, the React dashboards all change accordingly. So you can compare those exact schools and get exactly the info that you need.
Yeah, the React dashboards are actually really slick. Like they interact with the DKAN APIs to just pull the data, but the experience is fully customizable. So you can do filtering, you can do a lot of engagement, a lot of JavaScript interactions. The filtering is actually great because what happens is like you could say, I want to start with Decatur County and then I want to add this other county. And what happens is the entire dashboard changes on the fly based on what you add. All the charts change, all the filtering, the comparisons. If you can see there's two bar charts right there, right? If you add more filters, it just keeps bolting them on so you can see a whole comparison of everything that you would want to see in the dashboard itself. And it's fully interoperable because it's pulling data directly from the APIs and you're building whatever experience you want on top of that.
I'm curious about a couple of things. First is the DKAN platform open source?
Absolutely.
And then the second thing is how are the files upload supported? And what is the largest file upload one can do without requiring any special sauce?
So it really depends actually on the infrastructure that you're running it on. It can support really anything. I would say that the larger the data sets that you need, generally the beefier that the hardware that you want, the infrastructure underneath it that you need to support. But it can really, that's the limitation. So DKAN can actually do pretty much as large as you generally need it to. And it is sensitive to that too. It does have data validation
So the DKAN file uploading is not going through Drupal, it's some separate system.
Oh, it is going through Drupal, yeah, but it respects whatever is configured from the servers, yeah.
So it will do chunking if your PHP limits are not high
We
enough.
are working on optimizations, actually, that's a major thing, but what happens, we have a fast importer feature with DKAN that's using feeds, and feeds works in batches. So it is capable of doing batch management with larger files. It does take a little bit longer because it's kind of splitting it up into chunks, but that is definitely capable, and it's already in DKAN right now.
Thanks.
So DKAN is actually a Drupal distribution, correct?
That is correct.
So the question I have, so I manage over 100 Drupal sites, and I deal more in the faculty lab space and research groups and things like this. And so I was interested in the visualizations and such, but I would also need other features. So for example, can I add other modules and other things to the distribution, or is it kind of like a kind of an insular thing where
It is a Drupal-based system.
Yeah, but my
So,
question is,
yeah.
like, let's say, for example, I need other things, like maybe I need people content types, or I have bespoke pages where I want to use paragraphs, and
Yes.
things like this. I can do that.
You can, yes. One of the things that we generally recommend, this is just more or less the best practice, we try to be very careful about how those customizations are built to make sure that it works in a cohesive way with the rest of the features and the APIs and everything like that.
Right.
So that's one thing you do need to be careful of, but really, because of the fact that it is kind of architected to do that, you can pull in whatever you would like from the contributed module ecosystem.
Yeah, because what I was thinking is if I had like different types of content data, it would be, obviously the visualization data I would just use as is, but maybe in certain instances where maybe I need an overview page where they want it more curated or things like this,
Yeah,
I'll have like other things going on, and so.
you absolutely can do that.
Okay, and then the second question, same relation, is a lot of faculty, when they're doing their research, sometimes the data is not yet public because they haven't published. And the whole idea of this is open publishing, so is there some sort of, if you're using it within the same system, how would you do that?
It
In
is-
other words, if the graduate students need data sets that aren't public yet, for
Yep.
example.
Yeah, it's actually making use, we have under the contributed modules, and under DKAN, there's the two kind of workflow tools. We've also customized those for specific, like we have research modules that can do that as well that are really finely tuned for that. But specifically, we make use of just the standard, workbench and workflow type modules inside of Drupal. They can be customized by content type, they can be customized by entity. So the configuration of those are very robust and can be,
And is this built in 7 or 8?
this is 7 base.
Okay.
So we are actively, go ahead, Stefanie.
I just wanted to jump in regarding workflow and publishing content. So within out-of-the-box DKAN, you can choose to create content that's either in a published form, it goes straight to live, or say this unpublished, which is good if it's not ready yet, you still publish it. And workflow allows there to be 3 different levels of permissions.
That's what I was
Someone who's
looking
only
for.
allowed to contribute things, someone who's a moderator, and then someone who's a supervisor, so that you have someone like, let's say there's an intern that your organization just hired, they're 19, they're just uploading things, you don't really know, you don't want to give the full keys to the car.
Right.
You have them as a content contributor, the lowest role. The moderator or the supervisor is then able to check out
Right, it's a
the
typical
data
workbench
sets of
workflow.
content they're uploading and make sure
Yeah,
that they're ready.
that was my main
at
concern
time.
is that, if you had, say, for example, you had some students that were working on a data set that hasn't, they haven't published the data yet, so they don't want to be out in the wild, but
Yes.
The scheduler
Workflow.
feature is also super useful for that because you could say, hey, like when am I actually going to be publishing this data? And you could set it to a date and it would pick it up.
do you guys have a timeline for a V8 version, or is it?
We're actively working on it. I would be uncomfortable setting
Oh,
any
yeah, I completely
expectations
understand
around.
that.
Yeah, but it is being
I was
discussed.
going to mention, nowadays in the research community, because there is this need for open data, research groups are coming to agreements, and they put an agreement on with the data. We're letting you see the data, and they put some conditions on it, don't publish on it,
Gotcha.
and they let you see it, but you're really not supposed to do anything with it. So that's sort of a move towards openness.
So in other words, if you have collaborators from other institutions, they can see the data, but yet it's not in the public realm.
They're not supposed to publish.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
sometimes-
great, thank
I
you.
want to make sure we have some time for questions.
Yeah, I just want to ask a quick question about how you integrated React. Did you write that into the module yourself for the graphing? Is that its own module for that interface, or how did you?
So there is a React Dash module that is patterned or ships with DKAN, but really all that is gives the ability to embed the React Dashes inside of a DKAN system. The actual React dashboard itself is a separate project. It's a separate framework that has a whole bunch of utilities that enable you to build these really highly tuned interfaces.
So you can
that sit
build
on
those
top of it.
independently,
Absolutely.
cool, and just pull in the data through
Yep.
the API.
It's fully decoupled,
Cool.
so that's the whole design of it. Yeah. Henry.
So, tell me about the automated testing. Like the if people want to take this and add to it or whatever, you have automated tests set up?
Absolutely.
How many? What's coverage?
Yeah, it's almost fully covered actually. So it's about, I think, 96 or 97% covered, both from the PHP-based tests, and we also have some BHAT tests that can run to check the browser level interactions. So, and that's actually great for extending it in some of the use cases like you were describing, because then you would be confident that you're not breaking
Other things.
a lot of the functionality, right? And we're always looking to improve that. We're actually trying to find ways to even optimize those tests and make them even more streamlined. It's a great question. So it would help with the customization. But one point that I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, Henry, because I want to raise a really good point, that we are extremely open also to receiving public commits as an open source project from people who use DKAN and extend it in ways that maybe isn't provided out of the box. Love to see more people give back some of the cool work that they're doing as well to help extend it and really make the ecosystem stronger.
We have about a minute. I saw. Did you still have a question in the front? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I administer a neuroscience data sharing website. One of the features that I would like to have that I currently don't have is the ability to add references to publications that are associated with data sets, both original publications associated with the data and also new publications made that derive from the data. Is there some feature like that?
Yeah, you could add that as a custom metadata field.
Yeah, the metadata, the way that it's engineered and architected in DKAN is actually pretty highly extensible. So if you have certain types of attributes that you would like to track that is tied with the data itself, it could be like the license of the data. That's another good one that is really useful for talking about like how you would intend that data to be used in the public space.
I'm thinking of something like where you type in a PubMed ID and it automatically populates the different fields.
In 7, there's a Biblio module.
Yeah, I looked at that and I found that it was hard to.
Actually works quite well.
Okay.
Works very well, and it's also integrated with news. So you don't have to. One of the challenges with the Biblio module was that people, it's just citation. It's not. It provides a full and complete news integrations. You can build your own Biblios. Biblios.
Yeah, it's not just single citations. It could be movies. It could be all sorts of different types of data sets. And there's also one for 8 too called BibSite.
We use entity reference too. You could just do that. We use entity reference and create a content site for like your book or your publication, and then you can just add a field that unlimited, and you can slap up.
What was it?
Entity reference. Put a field.
But thankfully, though, because the fact that you could extend the metadata, you could add any of these fields or functionalities into that feature and have it work pretty seamlessly.
Which Drupal 8 features are more interesting for the DKAN? Out of the box features that come from Drupal 8?
I would have to answer that by talking about a lot of the GraphQL, the web services, and all the modernization they're doing around the APIs and the interoperability in Drupal 8. I think that is like the number one thing that really I feel is like it opens up a lot of potential for DKAN in Drupal 8. And secondly, the entity system having been advanced and enhanced in the 8 is really great because something like the DKAN Datastore is now a much more natural feature. In 7, heavy customization and a lot of building the hooks and everything that you would do for the operation. In 8, it's a lot more straightforward and logical.
We're at our time box. If people need to go. If you want to stay, we'll stick around and answer questions, but we are there. But if you want to ask your question, we'll stick around.
Yeah, just a quick question. As far as adding modules, I know that often that distributions, you kind of break it, you do updates on, security releases until the distribution is actually caught up. What's your approach with that? Are you trying to minimize the customization so that you can use those updates within the modules, or do you need to wait for the next, say, point update for the distribution itself?
So we really try not to make the distribution itself more bloated than it absolutely has to be. So all the dependencies that are there, we try to keep them down to an absolute minimum so it can be fairly lightweight. But we do regularly, when we see releases, whether they be security releases, module update releases, we try to get to them as soon as we possibly can. We cut new dot releases and DKAN on a regular routine basis. So we don't want people to be encumbered by the stack.
Okay, so it's better just to wait for the DKAN updates.
You can
jump in automatically.
We're making use of makefiles and such in 7, so really you can install it yourself if you don't want to wait. And it's fairly safe because most of the time those releases are, still supporting backwards compatibility.
Right.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions? All right, we'll stick around for a few minutes. Thanks everyone so much for coming.
Thank you.
Liz, is my glasses down? Hey, thank you.
It's going up
Oh, nice. Okay. So
that's okay.
See you around. I just.
So this is actually, so this has this shows all my stuff. So I do stuff all over campus. So I'm actually
I can send you now I'm going to share it with my
I'm just filling CSV. But I work, it's interesting. Okay, so my main so they use Hoppin, then if you're doing like